Hello and welcome. I am Deji Bademasi. Dramatic situations in the People's Democratic Party. Now, for peace to reign in the opposition party, the party's board of trustees, that's chairman of the party's board of trustees now, Walid Jibrin, has resigned from his position. Jibrin resigned in a meeting of the party's National Executive Council in Abuja on Thursday. Now, there's been crisis in the opposition party after some members, especially those in the camp of the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, now over what they refer to as regional lopsidedness in the leadership of the party now. Now, after Wike's failure to emerge the party's presidential flag bearer or the vice presidential candidate, the aggrieved members demanded the resignation of the party chairman, Iyorchia Ayu, saying major positions in the party should not be dominated by the North. Despite calls for his resignation, the former senator, that's the current chairman now, maintained that he will not resign. Following Jibrin's resignation now, former president of the Senate and chieftain of the party, Adolphus Wabara, who is from the southeastern part of the country, has now been appointed as the new BOT chairman. But it appears that may not be the end of the problem, because Governor Wike says Jibrin's resignation is inconsequential and that for justice, equity and fairness, the chairman of the party, Iyorchia Ayu, has to resign. Wike, who described the BOT as advisory and not a decision-making body, insists that the chairman, Iyorchia Ayu, must vacate his position. On the flip side, the National Executive Committee of the party has passed a vote of confidence on Ayu, suggesting that the party chairman will not be stepping down anytime soon. It's obviously a catch-22 situation for the PDP. Joining me now to discuss this further now is Farouk Bibi Farouk, who is a political affairs analyst. Mr. Bibi Farouk, thank you very much for joining us on the program. You look at what is happening in the PDP, it appears there is no end in sight to the crisis rocking that party as we speak. If the governor of Rivers State is still insisting that the chairman of the party has to resign, irrespective of the fact that the chairman of the board of trustees has resigned, and then the National Executive Committee has passed a vote of confidence on the chairman. So where does that leave things now under the circumstance?
Well, thank you for having me, Deji. Interesting, because I'm not only a public analyst, I was a practicing politician, and I was a member of the working committee of the PDP. I was the second national youth leader of the party. So I can tell you that I have some small experience with the PDP, and I'd say that I am beginning to see the end of the crisis, and I'm beginning to fear for Wike and his political future. Because no one man can be stronger than the whole party. Like no one man is more important than a country. As it is now, there is sufficient reconciliatory moves to the extent that, yes, the chairman of the BOT has lost his last 4 months of tenure in order to set out this problem and see the end of it. Of course, it is not a structural, for me, reconciliation. It's an internal reconciliation, because the party allows the BOT to run itself as it sees fit. So actually, to even place the BOT in the position of structures is not very correct in the distribution of party offices and government offices.
Okay.
But for me, I think Wike is dragging this matter too far. Because he doesn't have any issues with the election that he lost. He has accepted that he has lost an election. An election that he now argues should have been based on a zoning arrangement in which he wouldn't have the equity to even contest if that zoning arrangement was strictly followed, because the last PDP president is from his neighborhood, his backyard. So, but all the same, in the magnitude of PDP of throwing positions open, he contested as a governor. Now, being a governor is a very important position, and it will last for the next 6 months. But Wike should begin to think of his day after office. Everybody he has around him now are not really supporters. They are really people who are beneficiaries of his intransigency. And I think as it is today, we might say it's a problem between Wike and Atiku. But I assure you, after this next meeting from tomorrow, it will begin to be the problem between Wike and PDP. And that means Wike is standing out to fight the PDP. Something that I've always looked at as a possibility, because PDP, like the Nigerian political culture, is coming along with something that is like a nemesis of this issue of zoning. Once you make distribution of offices statutory, once you decide that they are not going to be as a result of political management, but it's just going to be entitlement, then you are going to always be having these problems. When I was in the PDP, I was absolutely against the zoning processes. I agreed that arrangements could be made, meetings could be had, understandings could come up, and anybody who has the capacity to win election can be endorsed from wherever he comes. But we do not own the minds of the voters. So we cannot decide that whoever we present must be voted for. We have to look for the first responsibility of a party is to win the election. So you have to read the environment and see that who is the best person to win the election. So there is no sense of entitlement. And it's a pity that Wike does not understand the history of this party and even the history of this country. Nobody who has come with a sense of entitlement has ever run this country. It has always been as a result of certain issues, probably by destiny or probably by some arrangement.
Do you think the resignation of the BOT chairman is the party now bending over backwards and acceding to some of the demands of Wike, and then with Wike now insisting that the chairman has to go, he's like setting new conditions, or if you like, trying to say that, look, he's still not satisfied with what the party has done, that he'd rather have it all his way?
Yes, the resignation of the BOT chairman is a conciliatory move. But I do not think the party would go any further, because from now on, it will be Wike versus the party. And I think the objective of the Wike group, or Wike personally, is to see that the party loses election, even if to come out and say it is because of him that the party lost election. Because if you remove the chairman today, there will be another condition. The final condition would be, why didn't he win that election as a Southerner? Why didn't he win that election as a governor? Why didn't he win that election as a successor to Jonathan? That will be the last state. At that point, he would be a loner who is trying to kill the party. So the conditions will continue. And my advice is PDP has considered enough. Yes, there is issue about a chairman and a presidential candidate coming from the same area, which for me has been an artificial creation all along. I do not so much give credence to the North-South thing, but there is an issue. But these issues are resolved after you take power. There is no way you can have a presidential candidate and ask him to work with a chairman that is not compatible to him. Then you are asking for failure, because there has to be a lot of synergy.
But his argument is that the chairman himself actually made it very clear that he was going to resign if the presidential ticket of the party, eventually went to the North. And that's how it turned out, that if the presidential candidate of the party was to come from the North, that he was going to resign, that he made it very clear. So, can you blame Wike for demanding that the chairman lives up to the pledge he made?
A person can make a pledge that is not legally binding on that person. It's a statement, is a promise that is possible to fulfill and might have conditions that will make it very difficult to fulfill. For example, today, if you want to remove the chairman, the Constitution allows only another northern chairman, which case conditions cannot be fulfilled there. If you say you want to do an election and create another set of party ESCO, where the South will now have the chairmanship and the North will have the secretary, and all other positions will go that way in the neck of the party. Are you facing general election, or are you facing balancing of your party? So these things happen the moment you have a president, even as a president-elect, leader of the party, then these conditions will come. And that is when everybody is properly rewarded, including Wike. Wike could be made Minister of Justice or something because he was he did very well in the primaries, or secretary to the government. But as at now, Wike cannot be president. So it is better for him to allow the party to create a president if he's really willing to go along with the party and if he loves the party. But I assure you that what Wike is doing is to kill the party, and he will continue on that path.
Do you think do you think the governor of Rivers State has been unreasonable with his demand? Because honestly, you know, after the resignation of the BOT chairman, a lot of people had thought maybe that would calm frayed nerves, especially after the meeting between Wike and the governorship candidates of the party just a day or two ago. You would think that maybe the resignation of the BOT chairman is probably one of the outcomes of that meeting. But with Wike now insisting that, irrespective of that, the chairman has to go, would you say he's been unreasonable in his demands?
Well, he is demanding for the party to lose election, which for him, if he intends to remain as a party member, is quite unreasonable. I have some history of this party, like I told you. I was part of the new PDP itself. If the party was in power, he would have opted for a confrontation directly and left, you know, to go to an opposition party. Now that the party is not in power, it is difficult for him to join the ruling party, and it's difficult for him to accept that the party has not given him that ticket. And so that is where the problem is. The more he pursues it, the more it becomes a sense of entitlement, which he can now back roll with the feelings of zoning that PDP had adopted to a large extent, which has never been properly explained, because it cannot come beyond the winning of election. Zoning can come after you are able to win an election. But the way it is coming now, Wike will have a platform to argue on the basis of zoning. That will be his last stand in order for the party to lose. And I tell you that PDP lost election in 2015 because of zoning. If it loses election in 2023, it is still because of zoning. Then maybe it could sit down and decide on the role of zoning for electoral fortune, because it will continue to hunt the PDP or even disrupt the PDP electoral victories over time. But to answer your question, I think Wike is being reasonable if he thinks he will make a party that has made him local government chairman, chief of staff, governor, minister, lose an election, and hopes that another political platform can carry him along. I have seen this over time. Like I told you, we left the PDP at a point in time. Many of us regretted it 7 months.
Let me ask you this final question. Do you think without Wike, because that's the impression he tends to give, that without him, without his support, it will be difficult for the PDP to win the presidential election? Do you get that impression?
Yes, that is what he presents, but I tell you, it is not so. It is possible for somebody to be a kingmaker in a party that is not facing elections. That is in the last 7 years, when it was just an opposition party. But now that every hands are on deck, Wike does not have the resources, the wherewithal, the power, or anything to stop PDP, even in Rivers State, where he was barely able to win his election. I tell you that as at now, when the party comes together, the only issue he would rely on would be the act of zoning back to the south. And if major members of the party agree that there will be concessions and they will accept the arrangement, Wike is fighting for himself, and he will be alone. And he will be one of the many minions in the party. Yes, he has relative influence based on history because he had bankrolled the party. But he forgot that this party was formed by people who brought somebody from prison, not from governor, and made him president. The governor was created in this party who did not have the telephone numbers of other governors and didn't have any monies to campaign for in this party, and it was possible. Goodluck Jonathan had no wherewithal. He ended up becoming the governor. Wike might be able to think that he's a very important person in the party, but over the history of the party, he would not stand as the way he thinks he is. That's my position.
Farouk Bibi Farouk, thank you very much for your input, and thank you for your time with us.
Thank you too for having me.
I will take a short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, there's been outrage in some parts of the country over claims that some Nigerians in diaspora are making efforts to fund the political campaign of the Labour Party's presidential candidate, Peter Obi. The reaction came after one of the leaders of the party, Patu Tome, revealed that the crowdfunding portals Nigerians in the diaspora plan to launch for Obi's campaign will be launched next week. As a result, some groups have expressed concerns about the legality of the decision of the presidential candidate to inaugurate the portal to raise funding from the diaspora. Some supporters of other political parties have even called on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to disqualify the presidential candidate. They've also vowed to begin a legal action to prevent the Labour Party from participating in the 2023 presidential election for engaging in activities that contravene the Electoral Act. But what exactly is the position of the Constitution on crowdfunding to sponsor political campaigns in the country? Joining me now to discuss this further is Monday Obani, who is a legal practitioner and chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association section on public interest and development law. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the program. Tell us what exactly the position of the law is on diaspora funding of political campaigns in the country.
Yeah, thank you, Deji, for having me. This is a very important topic, especially as we are edging towards 2023 general election. The Constitution itself and Electoral Act, they are very specific about funding of political parties, and we have to look at the philosophy behind issue of foreign funding. There is no country that will want its sovereignty to be compromised. And of course, that's why they are very careful in ensuring that any time they are having election in view, they will not want a situation where other countries probably will take advantage of probably a weakness of any of those countries that are ready to conduct election in order to sponsor any government that is coming in, because that will compromise the sovereignty of that particular.
But in this case, we're talking about Nigerians in the diaspora, so we're not talking about other countries. These are Nigerians accepted; they are not allowed to vote. But can they make contributions to support a political party?
Yes, I'm trying to build on the philosophy behind issue of foreign investment, by other individuals or government in election in any country. So they don't want a situation where the sovereignty of that country will be compromised. Also, issue of illicit fund coming into the state that will compromise the electoral process. Is something that any government will always do their laws, at law. Now, I have gone through the Constitution, Deji. I have also gone through the Electoral Act. I have not seen where there is even the issue of disqualification of any political party or candidate by virtue of any foreign donation. And I have not seen where the law, especially at laws, a Nigerian who is a member of a political party or who is interested in governance of his country, bringing in money to a political party, to an individual that wants to run for an election, where it is outlawed, by the Electoral Act or the Constitution. There is none. What I know that the Constitution itself, provided for, about issue of public funding of political party from foreign powers or foreign authority or foreign individuals or body, is that one, you are not allowed to hold or possess any asset or fund in any foreign country as a political party. That is not allowed. You are not allowed to hold or possess. Then secondly, you are not allowed to retain any foreign donation in your account beyond 21 days without reporting to INEC. Now, the Electoral Act now says that if you do any of these two, that's holding or retaining foreign fund or asset in a foreign country, what will happen is that you will forfeit that money and then pay a penalty. If you now retain beyond the 21 days that the law says you must report to INEC, then it means also you forfeit and pay penalty, and that is for political party. So that is the law today as I speak to you that governs foreign donation. So there is nowhere it says it is illegal for a Nigerian who lives in the diaspora who wants to fund any of the political parties here as a political party member or as an interested party who is interested in the country where he comes from, where the law outlaws it. There is nowhere. There is nowhere. And if anything ever happens that they find that you have retained or possess any of those money outside the country, it is issue of forfeiture and not even issue of disqualification. So I don't know where these people are coming from, with all manner of interpretation being given. Maybe there is any other law beyond the Electoral Act and Constitution, but if it's Constitution of us have 1999 Constitution as an amended or the Electoral Act of 2022, I don't think that is any provision, outlawing the position of a Nigerian who lives in diaspora from supporting any of his candidates in election here. There is none. There is none.
But is there also a danger? Is there a danger that if the Constitution and the Electoral Act, as you have put it, would seemingly be ambiguous now as to what would, as to this what would constitute illegality as far as diaspora funding is? Do we run the risk of politicians taking advantage of this? Because in this case, we're talking about the Labour Party. The truth is that you can't deny the fact that other politicians too who are running for elections could take advantage of that to get money from outside of the country to run elections. And sometimes it might be difficult to trace where this money is coming from, to say, look, it's coming from a party supporter or something like that, or even a Nigerian.
My brother, the law is very, very clear on what I've just told. That somebody now intends to go and get foreign funding from any other source other than by a Nigerian citizen is something that can be found. It's traceable. I mean, it's an issue of technology. We can trace wherever the money is coming from. Or if we cannot be able to trace it as a nation, we can probably employ the services of other nations to help us trace where the funding is coming from. As I said earlier, the philosophy behind the issue of foreign donation is we don't want a situation where the government in power will be compromised. The sovereignty remains, something that is very important, and you don't want a situation where illicit funds will flow from abroad into the country. It can compromise the government that is in power. We don't want a situation where people that are illegal or bodies now begin to bring government up in Nigeria or elsewhere. And so that's why they are very careful about that issue of foreign funding. We need to know what, and that's why you have to disclose. If you ever, you get it, you must within 21 days disclose to INEC that this is the money that has come from foreign and account for it. So I don't think we'll now begin to speculate and say, oh, the law is not explicit. To me, the law is very, very explicit. It's very, very clear, unless any person just want to make it ambiguous. And what is the canon of interpretation? When the law is very clear and explicit, you don't begin to import what the law does not.
So for you, going by the law, there is absolutely nothing wrong for Nigerians in the diaspora to raise money to support any candidate in running for elections in the country.
Yeah, I want somebody to point out that to me, that particular law or what section of the Electoral Act or even the Constitution that says a Nigerian citizen. Maybe somebody can say there's a lacuna in the law. If they now want to say the people who are in diaspora should not contribute, the law now specifically have to mention that Nigerians who are living abroad should not in any way contribute to electoral funding of political parties or political process in Nigeria. That has not been provided for. So whatever is not provided for, you have no right whatsoever to import into it, by way of canon of interpretation. So to me, let anyone point out, we are looking at section 85 of the Electoral Act. We are looking at 225 of the Constitution. Go and look at those two laws and look at what they have provided for an issue of foreign funding of political party in Nigeria. So there is not any provision that says a Nigerian who is interested. Why can you allow money to flow in from our Nigerian citizen into the country to help your economy, and then when it comes to issue of political
to elections,
process,
you won't allow it.
no, it doesn't look logical and sensible.
That's a very good logic, and I think that's where we'll have to leave it. Thank you very much for your time on the Ubani, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you for having me, Deji.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, that's how much we can take on the program this week. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.